Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Let me begin by introducing the topic of our presentation, the analysis of the impact of new sentiment on the dynamics of energy resource imports and exports in Ukraine during the full-scale war. Our research focuses on how media sentiment, that is, the emotional tone and polarity of news coverage, influences the flow of electricity imports and exports in Ukraine during the ongoing full-scale war. In wartime, both physical infrastructure and information channels become strategic assets. In such circumstances, news can act not only as a reflection of current events, but also as a factor shaping market and policy decisions. Through this work, we aim to demonstrate that the emotional content of the news, particularly negative coverage, correlates with increased energy import dependency and has limited but visible influence on export behavior. This study brings together artificial intelligence, sentiment analysis, and energy economics to demonstrate how news affects national-level energy flows. The core idea is simple. By analyzing the tone of daily news using LLM GPT-4 and then mapping that sentiment against real electricity trade data, we can identify patterns of influence. Our key finding is that when media sentiment becomes more negative, electricity imports tend to increase. This relationship is not linear but noticeable. While exports remain relatively unaffected in the short term, imports appear to respond dynamically to emotional public discourse around war-related events, infrastructure damage, and international support. Before the war, Ukraine was a significant exporter of electricity and an important transit country for European gas and energy flows. However, after February 2022, with the escalation of war, attacks targeted critical power infrastructure. Substations, power plants, and distribution systems were damaged or destroyed. As a result, Ukraine had to adjust its energy strategy rapidly. Among these challenges, one factor often overlooked is the role of media coverage. News influences public morale, investor confidence, and even government planning. A single headline about an attack on a nuclear plant can create panic or lead to increases in energy imports. This study asks, how strong is this influence and can it be quantified? The relationship between sentiment and market behavior has been widely researched in finance and increasingly in energy markets. Previous studies showed that tweets and headlines during the European energy crisis reflected and possibly amplified public fear and economic responses. Our work builds on these foundations but focuses on a unique case, a country at war. We analyzed both sentiment trends and their link to hard energy trade data. This interdisciplinary approach combines natural language processing with energy economics to evaluate a topic that is still understudied. We used a structured pipeline. First, we collected articles from the news website Ukrainska Pravda, one of Ukraine's largest independent news platforms, filtering them for energy-related content using specific keywords like electricity, blackout, nuclear plant, and so on. Then we used LLM GPT-4 to score the sentiment of each article. These scores were adjusted based on keyword frequency to ensure that more relevant articles had greater impact. Then we aggregated sentiment data by day, week, and month. Finally, we compared the sentiment with real electricity import and export data from the website Energy Map, which provided hourly records of cross-border energy flows. Here you can see the workflow diagram that illustrates the step-by-step process of our analysis. It begins with news scraping, preprocessing, and sentiment classification using the large language model GPT-4. Then we apply keyword weighting, adjust for positive-negative imbalance, and group sentiment data into structured JSON files by date. These are then aligned with energy trade data, enabling the creation of visualizations like heat maps, scatter plots, etc. This structured pipeline helped to minimize noise and ensured accuracy across data layers, from language sentiment to energy trade matrix. Unlike simple polarity classifiers, GPT-4 allowed us to perform sentiment analysis that understood context, irony, and geopolitical nuance. A sentiment score from -1 to +1 was assigned to each article, and then adjusted based on how many energy-related terms appeared. For example, an article with high emotional content and repeated mentions of power supply issues would receive a strong score. We also applied a correction factor to prevent the results from being skewed by the naturally high volume of negative wartime news. This ensured that even modest positive developments, like international support, were adequately represented. So what did we find? One major pattern was that slightly negative but consistent sentiment correlated with gradually increasing electricity imports. That is, when the news remains pessimistic over several weeks, not necessarily catastrophic but grim, it may prompt higher energy imports, perhaps due to expected future shortages. Another pattern was seen in June 2024. A sharp drop in sentiment corresponded with a dramatic spike in imports, the highest in our dataset. This shows that sudden negative media events can trigger short-term crisis behavior in the energy sector. Our regression analysis further validated the correlation between sentiment and import behavior. While the correlation coefficient wasn't very high, the Pearson coefficient was equal to -0.26. It was statistically significant. The trend is clear. The more negative the sentiment, the higher the import volumes in the following months. On the other hand, electricity exports showed very weak or even no correlation. This slightly reflects the structure differences. Exports are tied to long-term contracts, while imports respond more flexibly to short-term instability and demand shocks driven by news. In order to understand why sentiment shifts occur, we performed topic modeling using the LDA method, latent Dirichlet allocation. This technique grouped articles into 5 main topics. Each topic was then analyzed for average sentiment. The most emotionally charged topic was news about attack on infrastructure, while the most neutral or mildly positive topics related to policy updates and international support. This confirmed that different types of news drive different levels of emotional response, and that high emotion news aligns with stronger shifts in energy imports. The table represents the 5 topics extracted using latent Dirichlet allocation, each represented by 5 most relevant keywords, while the bar chart visualizes the absolute sentiment scores for each of these topics. The x-axis of the bar chart represents the topics, and the y-axis shows the absolute sentiment intensity, with a color gradient indicating the sentiment polarity, red for negative sentiment and blue for more neutral or positive sentiment. Analysis of these topics reveals patterns in news articles, demonstrating how sentiment changes depending on the type of news coverage. Let's look closer at the 5 topics. The first topic indicates missile and drone attacks. It has high negativity, strong import correlation. The second topic indicates power plant operation. It contains mostly neutral sentiment. The third topic indicates government and defense news. This topic contains mixed sentiment. The fourth topic indicates consumer energy supply updates. This topic comes from neutral to positive. And the fifth topic indicates European support and investment, generally positive. This topic structure helps us understand not just how much sentiment changes, but what kind of news triggers those changes. This can improve forecasting models and inform communication strategies during crisis. In conclusion, this research highlights the power of sentiment analysis in understanding and potentially forecasting national energy behavior during the war. Negative sentiment, especially when it intensifies rapidly, serves as a leading indicator for electricity import increases. However, challenges remain. A large language model GPT-4 is powerful but computationally expensive. For real-time applications or large-scale monitoring, lighter models or hybrid systems may be needed. Still, the study opens a path for using AI not just for text analysis, but for a real-time economic modeling in conflict zones. Thanks for your attention.